Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1972's that title right there. I believe it's roughly translated Blood Seducers, but it is BLUTJUNGE Verfuhrerinnen. I'm very sorry. I did volume 1 so far. This is volume 2. You can see the 2 right there. And this is directed by Erwin C. Dietrich. This is almost his version of the famous Schoolgirl Report series. He did 3 of these, as far as I know, and it's part of the new Ingrid Steger collection, I believe, that was put out in 2015 by Ascot Elite, German region-free Blu-ray releases. I also bought this off diabolicdvd.com. And this is the back of the Blu-ray. And this is volume 2 from 1972, 82 minutes long. You can catch my volume 1 on this YouTube page that I did a review of a little bit ago. So let's get into this movie here, directed by Erwin C. Dietrich. And this is, in a way, a version of the popular Schoolgirl Report series. So let's get into this here. BLUTJUNGE VERFUHRERINNEN. Oh, I have horrible pronunciation and I don't know how to do it, but I believe it's roughly translated blood seduction, young seducers, blood seducers, something like that. This movie is an anthology film, an erotic sexploitation anthology film that has a wraparound story as well. I'm going to go into a little bit of all the stories as well as all the varieties of aspects like cinematography, music, sexuality. Let's get into the film. First and foremost, the music. There's a lot of diversity in the music of this movie. Tons of diversity. We have scat music, jazz exotic, almost Italian flavored music, breezy music, like breezy, suave 60s television show music in some way. We have some reverb, like some percussive reverb. We also have a lot of usage of silence and natural sounds, as well as vintage old music from like the 20s. Yes, there is a lot of diversity of music in this film, folks. There is a lot of diversity in this erotic anthology film that is rated, by the way, 16. When we look at the style of the film, and I have some notes here so I don't forget certain things, but when we look at the style of the film, we have a lot of interesting things here. We have usage of close-ups. We have rapid fire editing, which is something I've seen in a lot of Erwin C. Dietrich films so far. We have slow fades on top of each other. So you'll have these very slow fades in one story in particular, and the lingering of the scene right before is right on top of the next scene. So predominantly faces, and or just the body itself. We have a red circle around the screen to mimic dreaming or fantasy. Very interesting. We have wonderful shots of a train in the snow. Wonderful shots of snowy mountains, but the exterior of a train in the snow, and also the interior of the cabins of the train at night in the snowy nights. Skiing, not something you typically see in an erotic anthology film. Typically it's warmer weather. Especially in volume 1, it was all warm weather, even on the beach. And an interesting makeshift movie theater is in here as well, and just an energetic level of fun in the style of this movie. There's just there's a fun energy in here that you can't deny. Now, in terms of the sexuality of this film, this being a sexploitation erotic anthology film, we have definitely a film where we have full nudity, male and female, which tends to be a common theme in Erwin C. Dietrich's films that he produces or that he directs. So we're getting vagina and penis, and but you know, things look like they're simulated or implied, but at the same time very, very sexual and erotic. And they're simulated, but they're simulated like they're real, like with, you know. So we have butts in panties bending over, some lots of butt shots, naked butt shot through mirrors. And by the way, there is some spectacular work with mirrors in this film. I wanted to say that as well. Some great shots involving women's bodies. Um, we have some sexual foot fetish, a lot of feet in this particular film, and mouth to feet, breast sucking, humping. So we are getting humping in this film, and girls with multiple men, and girls being the seducer. Girls, you know, being the seducer and being in charge, which was something that was definitely in volume one, and with the title having seducers in it, yes, women definitely being the seducer in here, and taking charge of their own sexuality in a way, which would be very almost, you could see in conservative circles and even in our modern times, would be very, very controversial ideology, which makes these films all the more interesting and all the more relevant to those of us who love movies that are not in Hollywood. Now I'm going to go through some of I'm going to go through all the stories here, but without giving, you know, spoilers per se, as if there were really spoilers necessarily in these stories. It's not like there's twists or things like that, like Creepshow or something. But first off, I want to say that the title sequence of this film was very similar to the title sequence of Volume 1, except it was just an eyeball and a breath and a nipple in this one, very close up. But the title sequence, I love when movies do this. The title sequence kept continuing around the movie. So a little bit of title, the movie starts. A little bit more title, the movie starts. A little bit more title, the movie starts. I love that. Very powerful to me. Tarantino has incorporated that. You could think of the movie Pulp Fiction, for example, where he would incorporate that. And we have this very interesting, almost like the image of the film, a nude poster image that gets repeated in the credit sequences of the film. Just the eyeball and the nipple, the areola. Now we have a wraparound story in this film. It's very interesting, right? So, you know, in volume one, we had, you know, kind of a bunch of journalists. In volume two, we have a single guy, bachelor guy, who has he hires someone to type for him, his ideas, because he wants to write about women. He wants to write erotic stories, and he wants to know what's going on in women's minds, I think, you know. And but he wants to write erotic stories, and what do you know? An attractive girl comes over to be the woman who types for him. And as he comes up with each story, and she compliments that, and they go back and forth, they have very interesting camaraderie, really fun camaraderie, really cool stuff, like in their dialogue with each other in this wraparound story, dealing with the stories that are happening. As they come up with a story, as he comes up with a story and she's typing it, then we get a story in the film, in the anthology. And there's a great upskirt shot of his typist in the film, and there's even some more with her as well, and something that involves a twist at the end of the movie that would be very politically incorrect and very wrong by our standards, probably at all times, but especially today. And that's all I'm going to say. The end of the film. With one story, it deals with skiing outside, bruises on a girl's body, nighttime train cabin that almost reminded me of Hostel 2 or Night Train Murders, mirror butt shots, mirror almost up butt shots, and some drama as well. Really interesting, and the longest story of the bunch was the skiing story. And the main girl in here, she's right here. I don't want to get too much nudity in here, but she's that blonde girl that my thumb is on right there. Really attractive, really sexually attractive, her body, everything else, and in the mirror, and the way she poses, and her bruises, it's really bizarre stuff in here. But that is the first story. And then we go to another story dealing with a bowling alley and a girl who kind of, let's just say, works at the bowling alley. But first, we get some bowling. So this was a really kind of quick, uh, unexpected story here. We also have this guy who's obsessed with film. He's obsessed with movies. All he does is watch his projector and he peeps in a hole to the girl next door. And we get some really fascinating old kind of from the 20s and stuff, silent sex clips, erotic clips, adult clips, from way, way back when. So they're kind of scattered in here, and some interesting stuff with feet in here, and a guy who's obsessed with film. I thought that was really kind of cool. And then we go to another story with a schoolgirl who masturbates and possibly involves a poster of Elvis, some really rapid fire editing here, and a school trip and chickens. Yes, indeed, folks, and chickens. This hosts probably one of the more explicit sections of the film in terms of the masturbation of of the girl, and then even some doggy style. And we have some doggy style in here, and we have a barn as well. We have another story. This was really unique. Two killers, a man and a woman, at a movie theater watching a movie with some sexual violence in it, and they wind up doing some things in the theater, then they wind up doing some things in a bathroom, and the ending of this story is very interesting as it leaves some things in here, but we also get some narration from the wraparound story and things like that, and which is interesting, but some crime, some possible violence going on here, and the movie that they're watching, very interesting. Then we get a truck driver, and a girl that the truck driver picks up, and there's an interesting tease play within the characters of this particular story, and the girl is great in this story. She's a great look. All of the girls have a great look in this movie, so this was a wild one. And we also have another one, and this is slightly out of order. I skipped over this, so I'm just going to this one. We have a man and a woman, two lovers in bed, and they're kind of like the stereotypical married couple reading the paper, on opposite sides, not looking at each other, exhausted, annoyed, stressed out. And each one of them, you go into their fantasy. Each one of them has a sexual fantasy of someone that they were with. And the interesting thing is that while the couple's white, their fantasies are with black people. So I thought that was really, really interesting. The husband or the guy having a fantasy of I think like a black prostitute, and then the wife with the man. And so it's very interesting also with the racial issues in this particular one, probably very controversial for 1972. And the last one actually has Ingrid Steger in it, the girl from I Am a Groupie in Volume 1, also that I reviewed in this YouTube page. She is a babysitter, and she plays awesome vinyl records, and she takes her clothes off and dances when the parents are out to dinner. And we have very interesting stuff going on in this particular story involving the husband, the wife, the son, and the dog. Those are the stories, and then we end off with the climax of the wraparound that is quite hilariously controversial. Folks, this is Volume 2 right here. You can pick this up, Ascot Elite Blu-ray, from DiabolicDVD.com. Thank you so much for watching the Tenru Bizarre YouTube page, where I talk about these types of films that need to be talked about. Please feel free to check out all my other reviews and my own personal films at youtube.com/poopydiarrhea. Thank you and good night.